Edinburgh, 1828, a city building the future through medicine. One problem, they needed bodies. Hundreds of medical students, thousands of people dying to learn anatomy, but the law offered only one source: executed criminals. One body per year, that wasn't enough. So, a shadow market emerged. Grave robbers, body snatchers, resurrection men, they sold the dead to the ambitious. But grave robbing couldn't feed the appetite. One doctor wanted more. He understood a truth: the best anatomist needs the most bodies. For years, they operated perfectly. Victims selected for invisibility, methods designed for efficiency, delivery systemized, payment guaranteed. What follows is a story about ambition consuming ethics, about how systems rationalize what individuals refuse, about how progress has always been built on the foundation of someone else's sacrifice. This is the story of the Resurrection Men, a story about how far we'll go for progress and what we're willing to ignore to achieve it. (1828) Edinburgh, a city transformed by scientific revolution. The university had become sanctuary for the brightest minds in Europe. But one obsession consumed them all: the human body. Understanding anatomy required seeing, but seeing required bodies, and bodies were scarce. The law allowed only one source of cadavers for dissection: executed criminals. Perhaps one per year, but hundreds of students demanded knowledge, thousands demanded healing. And so, a shadow market emerged, quietly, inevitably: resurrection men, body snatchers. Common criminals who discovered a lucrative trade, the dead were currency. Enter Dr. Robert Knox, 35 years old, brilliant, ruthless. He'd returned from South Africa with scars, stories, and absolute conviction. Edinburgh needed a world-class anatomy school, and he would build it. Knox understood a simple truth: the best anatomist needs the most bodies, and the most students, and the most reputation. William Burke was nobody, Irish immigrant, laborer, desperate. He arrived in Edinburgh with nothing but poverty and opportunity. He rented a room, he took odd jobs, he met William Hare. That meeting would change everything. William Hare kept a lodging house in Edinburgh's slums, the place where the desperate rented space by the night, where society's forgotten ended their days unremembered and unmourned. Hare was practical. When a tenant died of natural causes and left no family to claim him, he didn't saw grief, he saw opportunity. The story begins with a death nobody mourned: an old man named Donald. He owed rent. He had no family. He had no future. When Donald died, Hare faced a choice familiar to men of poverty: bury him properly and lose the rent money, or find another use for the body. Burke and Hare made a decision. They put Donald's body in a box. Then they carried it to the doorstep of Dr. Knox's anatomy school and knocked. The anatomy school paid without questions. £10, more money than either man had seen in months. The partners had discovered something extraordinary: dead men were worth more than living ones. And unlike executed criminals, these bodies came without legal restrictions. Within weeks, they understood this wasn't a one-time opportunity, it was a sustainable business model. Dr. Knox needed more bodies. His reputation grew with each semester. More students enrolled. More wealthy patients sought his expertise. Demand was insatiable. Knox had one question for Burke and Hare: "Can you supply more?" Burke and Hare said yes, but natural deaths came rarely, and they were impatient men. They realized what they had to do. They had to stop waiting for death. They had to create it. The pattern became clear. Burke would find targets, typically elderly tenants, or young travelers with no connections. Hare would invite them to stay. And then they developed what would become known as burking, a method leaving no marks, no bruises, no evidence, just a pillow, just pressure, just patience. The three men had created something uniquely efficient, a murder pipeline that fed Edinburgh's medical ambitions. Knox never asked questions. He never wanted to know. He only knew bodies arrived. His reputation grew. His students excelled. His ambitions were being realized. They killed at least 12 people, perhaps 16. The records are incomplete, which is perhaps their own kind of horror. Victims so disposable they don't even have complete documentation of their deaths. These were the forgotten. Mary Patterson, Abigail Simpson, women without family, without connection, without anyone to notice they'd gone. Mary Patterson was 27 years old. She worked where she could: domestic service, sex work, survival. She had no future that Edinburgh was willing to offer her. She met Burke on the street. He offered her money for company. She accepted. It was how women like her survived. It was also how she died. Every murder followed the same pattern: quiet, methodical, almost bureaucratic. Burke would pin the victim's limbs. Hare would apply the pillow to the face. Within minutes, consciousness would end. Within an hour, the body would be boxed. By morning, it would be delivered. Dr. Knox noticed certain things. The bodies came too frequently. They were too fresh, the circumstances too convenient. But he had something more important than curiosity. He had ambition. Knox built his entire philosophy on one principle: never ask the wrong questions. Never see what would prevent you from accomplishing your goals. Dr. Knox's reputation soared. His anatomy school became the finest in Britain. His students were the most prepared. His discoveries were celebrated throughout Europe. Everybody meant another discovery. Every discovery meant another reputation point. Every reputation point led to another student paying premium fees. And somewhere beneath Edinburgh, in a cold room at the anatomy school, the body of Mary Patterson lay on a dissection table. Knox's students would learn from her death without knowing her name or how she died. Progress was built on her corpse. Knowledge was extracted from her death. Medical history was written using her violation. People noticed things: bodies arriving with bruises that didn't match the cause of death stated on documents. The supply increased coinciding with no increase in executions. The medical community noticed. The authorities noticed. But nobody acted, because acting would require questioning the entire system that had made them successful. Burke and Hare had refined their operation into something perfectly efficient. They'd killed enough people that they understood exactly how many they could murder before suspicion became action. They'd calculated the sweet spot, regular enough to be profitable, careful enough to avoid detection. But every system contains the seeds of its own destruction. And their system was about to encounter something they hadn't anticipated: a witness with nothing left to lose. One day, a woman named Margaret Campbell arrived at the lodging house. She was elderly. She had no family. She was, in every way, the perfect victim. She had no idea she'd be the reason that would end the entire operation. Because Margaret Campbell had someone who cared about her, someone who would notice she'd gone. When Margaret didn't return home, her best friend began looking, not with resigned acceptance, but with action. After years of murders the system had accepted, a woman's true friend asked a question that couldn't be ignored: "Where is my friend?" The investigation started eventually. The two criminals were questioned. They had alibis, they had explanations. They had committed enough murders that they were confident nothing could touch them. But something had shifted. The official eye, once looking away, was beginning to look directly at them. Hare broke first. Under questioning, he understood that his partnership had no future. He had a choice: protect Burke or protect himself. He chose himself. He made a deal. He would testify against his accomplice. He would explain the murders. He would identify the system. In exchange, he wouldn't get the rope. Burke was arrested, and as the investigation deepened, the entire machinery of murder was exposed. Knox was questioned. His students testified. His reputation, so carefully built, began to collapse. The questions Edinburgh had to face were unavoidable. How deep did this go? Who knew? Who benefited? Dr. Knox was never charged with murder, but he was tried in the court that matters most: public opinion, and he was found guilty. The medical establishment that had celebrated his success then abandoned him. Not because he'd committed murder, but because he'd known, and he'd chosen not to act. William Burke's trial was the largest in Scotland's history. Thousands gathered. The charge, murder, the evidence, overwhelming. Hare's testimony was clinical. He described the murders with the precision of a technician reviewing operational procedures. How many victims, how they were killed, where the bodies went. Burke was brought to the grass market, the same place where executed criminals were displayed. 30,000 people gathered. Edinburgh had come to witness. The irony wasn't subtle. Burke had murdered to supply executed criminals' bodies. Now he would become the executed criminal whose body the anatomy school would claim. Dr. Robert Knox was destroyed, but not by law. He was destroyed by society. His school closed. His students dispersed. His reputation, once glorious, became synonymous with moral catastrophe. Knox never apologized. He never admitted knowledge. He simply aged into irrelevance, a brilliant man made toxic by complicity. The murders forced a reckoning that changed law. The Anatomy Act of 1832 was passed specifically because of Burke and Hare. The solution to the supply problem was to formalize what had been informal. The bodies of the poor would be available to anatomy schools. The unclaimed would serve science. Burke and Hare's murders created a crisis deeper than law, a crisis about progress itself. Can medical knowledge built on murder be legitimate? Can science progress ethically? Every doctor educated in Knox's school benefited from the murders. Every life saved by knowledge gained through dissection is partially built on the corpses of murdered people. This is history. This is progress. This is the uncomfortable truth. They called it burking. You wouldn't hear it coming. Each body, each murder, all to supply Edinburgh's anatomy schools. When the authorities finally caught them, one confession unlocked countless murders. This is the scandal that would forever change how we source medical cadavers. Winter 1828. You live in a single freezing room with your wife and 3 children. The rent is overdue. Your daughter is very sick. There's no work, no food, no hope. This is how desperation begins. A well-dressed man approaches you in a filthy tavern. He's a surgeon's assistant. He felt you were a desperate man. That is why he approached you. He speaks quietly. £5 for a fresh corpse, delivered tonight. No questions. £5 could feed your family for 2 months. You have until midnight. You've never done this before. You wait outside the graveyard until the watchman finishes his rounds. The gates are locked, but the walls are low. Your hands shake as you climb over. You tell yourself, it's just a body. The dead don't need it anymore. You and your partner dig your first grave in silence. You knew someone as desperate as you to join you. The dirt is frozen. Every scrape of the shovel sounds deafening. You hit wood. The coffin is cheap pine. It cracks easily. Inside, a young woman. She's been dead 3 days. She's heavier than you thought. Dead weight. You wrap her in canvas and drag her through the mud. Her head lolls. Her skin is cold as marble. You don't look at her face. You can't. The surgeon's assistant meets you at the anatomy school's rear entrance. He doesn't speak. He just opens the sack, nods, and hands you £5 in coins. The door slams shut. You split the money, £2, 10 shillings. Your daughter eats meat that night. Word spreads among the surgeons. You're reliable, discreet. The medical schools are desperate. The law only allows them to dissect executed criminals, but there aren't enough hangings. So they pay men like you. You dig again, and again, it becomes routine. You learn the tricks. Dig from the head, it's faster. Use a wooden spade, it's quieter. Bribe the gravedigger to tell you who died yesterday. Target the poor, their graves have no guards. You get good at this, too good. The wealthy start protecting their dead. Iron mort safes are bolted over fresh graves. Watchtowers go up in cemeteries. Armed guards patrol at night. You adapt. You wait longer. You travel to rural churchyards where no one's watching. One night, you pry open a coffin and find rocks. It's a trap. Torches flare in the distance. Dogs bark. Men shout. You run. Your partner isn't fast enough. They catch him. 7 years hard labor. You never see him again. You need a new partner. You meet a man in a boarding house. His name is William. He's quiet, cold, empty eyes. He suggests something you've thought but never said aloud. Why dig up the dead when we can make our own supply? You find a drunk man passed out in an alley. William kneels beside him, places a hand over his mouth, and presses a small pillow he brought over his face. No struggle, no sound. The man stops breathing. William calls it burking. No marks, no blood. You sell the body for £8. Fresh is worth more. You tell yourself he would have died anyway, frozen to death, liver failure. You didn't kill him, you just accelerated the inevitable. The surgeons don't ask questions, they just pay. You do it again the next week, then the week after. You choose carefully. Drifters, prostitutes, the homeless, people no one will miss. William does the killing, you do the carrying, the money piles up. You move your family to a better room. Your daughter feels better. You sleep less. The next victim is a beggar, an old woman, blind. She trusts William when he offers her shelter. She dies in the room. You carry her out in a sack at dawn. The surgeons pay £12. She's the freshest yet. You buy your wife a new dress. She doesn't ask where the money came from. William brings a child, maybe 12, ragged clothes, big eyes. He says the boy saw too much. You hesitate. This is different. But William reminds you, you're already a murderer 15 times over. One more won't matter. You help him carry the sack. You don't sleep that night. A medical student recognizes the boy's face on the dissection table. He was a street vendor. Everyone knew him. The student tells the professor. The professor alerts the police. They search the school. They find your sacks. The police finds William. He confesses immediately. He gives them your name. They come for you at dawn. You don't run. Where would you go? Your wife screams, your children cry, the neighbors spit at you as you're dragged through the streets. The mob wants blood. The courtroom is packed. There is a crowd gathered outside screaming for your death. The evidence is overwhelming. 20 murders confirmed. William gets life in prison for testifying against you. You get the rope. The judge calls you a stain on humanity. You don't disagree. They hang you in the grass market. The crowd cheers as you drop. And then, the final insult, your body is given to the surgeons. You, the body snatcher, are dissected in front of medical students. Your skin is tanned into leather for bookbinding. Your skeleton is displayed in a museum. It's still there today. Room 11, Surgeons Hall, Edinburgh. A warning, a trophy, a punchline to a joke you never got to hear.